In the last to last class, I spoke about Gerard Manley Hopkins, who was writing around the 1890s, so closer to the 20th century. He came up with a new form and technique of writing poetry, a sprung rhythm. A sprung rhythm. It's a technicality that you have to follow in the writing of poetry. Unlike him and later Emily Dickinson. Um, Emily Dickinson was a woman who wrote around 400 and more poems who got published after her death. Her poems are, if nothing but erratic sentences or words jaggedly brought together. She was someone who was scared of stepping out of her house. Very, very interesting life behind the hearth, and a profound poetess. So when these poets were defying all said or aforesaid norms laid out before them of poetry, so are the moderns doing. The modern poets let go of simple grammatical errors in the favor of poetic diction and to create better meaning. This particular writer, compares this letting go of grammar in order to capture the real essence of closer lived life to the earliest form of poetry writing, which is ballet writing. Ballet writing it was started by the Scots, and it spoke about beautiful romantic stories in the rhyme scheme of A B, with mostly it was four to six syllables in a line, and the rhythm was completely simple. The idea was to tell a story which has a supernatural hint to it at almost all times. The old ballet singers, interested in getting on with the story, did the same thing, letting go of basic grammatical rules. In fact, whether they follow the imaginative logic of dreams, seeking reality within those dreams, or whether they were preaching Blake's sermon, "Thou art a man, God is no more, thine own humanity learn to adore." This is William Blake the Romantic. He's considered as a precursor to the Romantics. Thou art a man, you're a man, God is no more. Thine, your own humanity learn to adore. Do not seek morality and faith from divinity. Your own humanity will lead the way. Modern poets were ushering their readership into an occasion of living where God ceases to exist and all that is moral rests within you. The best of the moderns, like the great poets of all times, use and, if you please, abuse language in order to get closer to life. And life includes, of course, nature as well as man. For the poet, this is interesting, and this is one fundamental which has not changed over the centuries in poetry. When we say man, we include nature within it. When poets talk about life, they include man and nature within its compass. Nature as well as man, and dying and mind. So certain tropes or themes that have been perennial throughout the writing of poetry: man, nature, concept of death, concept of love, life, concept of mind. A young poet who teaches English has written, "The problem is how to be as simple as one can and as complex as the experience demands. And I confess that the latter has always seemed to me the more exciting and urgent of the two." So, as I told and explained in my previous class, after the Second World War, poets drew within themselves the source of their poetry. Now, whatever your education has been, you write poetry based on that education. So your readership needs to necessarily have to understand your cultural, moral, ethical standpoint, the education you've had so far in order to even understand your poetry. So it's it complicates a very simple matter that the poet has to convey, because the poet will convey it through his idea and experiences. So the more and more we end up entering modern, postmodern, 20th, 21st, 22nd century, what starts happening is that the poets start using their own bank of knowledge to speak something very simple. The readers now have to understand it based on their own experiences. So what the poet intends to write and what necessarily the reader captures from it can be two very diverse things, and it is completely acceptable in poetry, which is definitely not saying that if I give you a question on where the mind is without fear of Rabindranath Tagore and you give me a critical analysis of Lonnie Hicks, it is acceptable. No, not at all. Don't take this on yourselves. I confess, okay, the complexity may require an elusiveness to not say something directly that is rather literary than otherwise. Okay, it's the complexity that arises because of she's talking about the complexity that arises because of the poet's knowledge background and the expected readership's knowledge background. They are diverse. What I have studied is very different from what you all have studied and grown up, and therefore our knowledge banks being very difficult and different, I cannot expect that the experience with which I have written the poem, you will imbibe the poem with the same experience. You might imbibe it with a different experience altogether. Let's see. The modern poet works upon emotions as old as man to present a vision of reality that can be grasped only by the most alert, sensitive, forward-looking minds, using means more abstract than those employed by the painter. Using concepts too precise for the musician, he is occupied, like every artist, with giving an account of experience and thereby ordering the chaos in which he finds himself. Every poet seems to be lost in his own complex world of what he or she understands as life. Why just poets? Why don't you see even novelists as people who are stuck in a web of their own imagination and their lives, and they are writing through their lives? It might not necessarily be your experience, but the poet or the writer lays out the experience to you on a platter. You imbibe the experience through your sense and understanding. Using means more abstract than those employed by the painter, using concepts too precise for the musician, the poet is occupied, like every artist, with giving an account of experience and thereby ordering the chaos in which he finds himself. A lot of people argue that the occupation of the poet is continuously to grasp and run after what people understand as the ultimate truth and to present it to his readership in a manner that is simple, lucid, and yet complex. I would say each life's ultimate truth is very different from the others, and literature is a very big effort of entire humanity coming together to read about one person's journey through his or her ultimate truths, to reach a formidable, inconclusive conclusion. But towards the end, whether they were the ancients or the metaphysicals or the moderns or the postmoderns, what is it that survives? You cannot call it a sense of optimism that survives in poetry, but the sense of life throbbing, that life matters more than anything else, and the sense that to be brave, to fight our own innermost demons and to live a fulfilling life. Most of the poets will ascribe, most of the writers will ascribe to that being the ultimate truth of life. To have the fullest, happiest of life that you can imagine for yourself, to first find it within yourself and then to make it a reality. So poetry is just an attempt of that one person trying to bring forth to his audience those ultimate complex truths based on his experiences. I will be today giving you the PDF file of this Understanding Poetry. You can refer to it when trying to understand the different zones and waves of poem writing that came out.